First tonight, I have to start with the absurdity of the world in which we live. From Greta Thunberg to a prominent American Jew being denied entry to Australia. Greta is a morally repugnant and confused woman, and she swapped her cause du jour from climate activism to hatred of the Jewish state of Israel. On board a yacht, she tried to go and save Gaza. Not from the terrorists, mind you, as Israel is trying to do, but from Israel. And when she was stopped and given a sandwich, she released a video claiming she'd been kidnapped. I mean, the absurdity of this spectacle and the associated media coverage is difficult to stomach, and I wanted to ignore it, as I have done for most of the past week. But why I'm not tonight is because I think we need to speak about the trend where Greta and many on the left have swapped their environmental crusades to embrace hatred for Israel. It is serious. Yes, the Greta show is amusing in the way it is when a 2-year-old throws a spectacular tantrum in a crowded airport and you can only shrug your shoulders and laugh. But the fact that so many on the left are turning hatred of Israel into a fashionable cause is alarming, and as a Jew, dangerously frightening. Global warming protests abandoned, replaced by supporting Hamas, who as recently as last month killed a young protester similar to Greta. Climate action is now forgotten and hatred of Zionists embraced. Never mind that Israel is the only Jewish state in the entire world and one that is constantly under siege and terror attack. Never mind that young Israeli women and entire families, including children, were slaughtered and girls were raped by Hamas in an actual genocide on October 7, while Israel takes every effort to avoid civilian casualties, going to great lengths to tell people to leave before they take military action against terrorists. Now, Greta's contradictions and false claims also need to be called out. The Israeli Foreign Ministry exposed her nonsense by revealing exactly how much aid she was planning to deliver in what they wonderfully described as her selfie yacht. They said while Greta and others attempted to stage a media provocation whose sole purpose was to gain publicity, and which included less than a single truckload of aid, more than 1,200 aid trucks have entered Gaza from Israel within the past 2 weeks. And in addition, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has distributed close to 11 million meals directly to civilians in Gaza. The tiny amount of aid that was on the yacht and not consumed by the celebrities will be transferred to Gaza through real humanitarian channels. Now, you've probably seen today the headlines in the media that Greta claimed she'd been kidnapped. Well, this is disappointing coverage because it's inaccurate and untruthful. Because what actually happened was that the Israelis boarded the boat, gave them all something to eat and some water, and brought them safely to Israel. And in this footage I'm about to show you, and you can see Greta's wearing a green hat, and she doesn't even appear to say thank you as the food, the sandwiches and the water are distributed. Yet for all this wonderful treatment, Greta claimed she'd been kidnapped in a pre-recorded video. So she assumed she was going to be kidnapped. She didn't bother to wait for the facts to play out.
My name is Greta Thunberg and I am from Sweden. If you see this video, we have been intercepted and kidnapped in international waters by the Israeli occupational forces or forces that support Israel. I urge all my friends, family and comrades to put pressure on the Swedish government to release me and the others as soon as possible.
Absurd nonsense. And all of this after Hamas declared war on Israel and still refuses to give back hostages who actually were kidnapped, who Greta appears not to care about at all. And when it was one thing for the left-wing politicians and the media to applaud her when she first came to prominence as a schoolgirl who was skipping class. But now she's a 22-year-old woman who should know better. And in a stroke of genius, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz says he'll make Greta and co. watch the 45-minute screening of the October 7 massacre before they're sent back to their home countries. And maybe they'll learn something if they actually have the decency to watch it. But this entire saga and the Free Palestine movement behind it has abandoned rationality and embraced the absurd. Some former child activist ignoring the actual terrorists who raped women and who couldn't care less about her pet cause of climate change as they spend billions firing weapons at civilians in Israel. Now, columnist and regular guest on this program, Brendan O'Neill, had some fun with this in an article. He described it as sanctimony on the high seas and ocean-going virtue signalling, and he says it's an entirely self-serving stunt masquerading as an act of charity. He writes as they take selfies of themselves sobbing into their keffiyehs over what a uniquely barbarous nation Israel is. Israel is literally saving Palestinian lives. They do moral pantomime for likes and clicks. Israel does actual aid with very little thanks. And as Brendan rightly points out, Israel is feeding Gaza. On Thursday alone, 1.4 million meals were distributed in Gaza. Israel and America's new aid center that gives aid directly, that gives food directly to Palestinians, is working. When the United Nations distributed aid and food, Hamas was looting it and then reselling some at inflated prices that most Palestinians couldn't afford. And now the United Nations is upset because they don't have control of aid and Palestinians are actually getting food. But Brendan O'Neill makes an excellent point that really resonates with me. And it's partly why, as I say, I wanted to speak about this topic tonight. He says, I can't be the only person who finds it chilling that the world's only Jewish nation has become the target of rich, bored Westerners' fashionable rage. This activism isn't just risible, it's dangerous. And this is how I feel, and I've been so exasperated over it. Despair that hating Israel has become the cause du jour. The sole obsession with Israel is disturbing in the media and in politics. And it's one the Albanese government has embraced, of course, seemingly without any care for the Jewish Australians who've worked so hard to help build our nation into what it is today, a society that they seem so intent on tearing down. And so it's without surprise that prominent American-Israeli entrepreneur Hillel Fuld has been banned from entering our country for 3 years. The Albanese government, and specifically Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke, claim he's a threat to our peace and safety. The letter he was sent cancelling his visa says, I consider that segments of the Australian community would be concerned about the visa holder's denial of mainstream media reporting of the Palestinian killings and the inflammatory comments made by the visa holder in multiple social media posts. I mean, is this the freedom of speech police? You have to now believe that there was a massacre in Gaza by Israel? Well, I don't. Of course there wasn't a massacre. Tony Burke is taking Hamas propaganda as gospel instead of distorted lies from a terror regime. And the letter that Tony Burke sent him also points to other tweets where Hillel discusses the percentage of those radicalised by fundamentalist Islam. Now, there's extensive research into this area where studies analyse what percentage of people view the 9/11 attacks as justified. So, should you really be banned from Australia for sending a tweet about a highly researched subject field that academics in Australia and around the world work on full time? I mean, it's bizarre. None of his comments amount to hate speech or Islamophobia, as Tony Burke claims, but they are pro-Israel. And they do disagree with the preferred narrative of the Albanese government and the likes of Greta Thunberg. Now, Hillel will be on the show tonight. It's an exclusive interview, and he says he was floored when his visa was cancelled.
I literally had to read the email like 5 times. I was like, there's no way that a government is banning some random guy who writes on the internet. I'm not a politician or anything. I had to read the email literally 5 times. The topic of my talk wasn't even politics or anything to do with Gaza or anything like that. I was there to talk about how Israel and Israeli innovation is changing the world and making the world a better place. What's inflammatory about that?
And you can watch that coming up shortly in the show. But this has become a diplomatic incident now with the United States involved. The US ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, has written personally to Tony Burke asking him to reconsider his decision. Now, I've got a copy of Mike Huckabee's email, and it says, Mr. Fuld has both US and Israeli citizenship and is a well-known executive entrepreneur in the high-tech industry in both Israel and the United States. He also posts extensive content on various social media platforms that he uses for advocacy for the innocent civilians murdered on October 7 by Hamas and for the over 250 hostages taken that day. He says Mr. Fuld is a highly respected member in his community and well known in Israel. He says while he holds strong views against terror and the kind of massacre that occurred on October 7, he would pose no threat to the people of Australia by his actions or words. I mean, this is next level, the United States intervening in one of Tony Burke's ridiculous visa decisions. And once again, I feel the perplexity of living in an upside-down universe. And adding to the irony of this is that there's been no action at all from the Albanese government against the hate preachers, some of whom are in Tony Burke's own electorate. I mean, remember this incident on the streets of Lakemba on October 8.
I'm elated! It's a day of courage! It's a day of happiness! It's a day of pride! It's a day of victory! This is the day we've been waiting for!
Right, so that is tolerated, yet a pro-Israel American Jew travelling on his United States passport who never ever promotes violence is denied entry. So yes, this is a free speech issue, but it's far, far more concerning than that. It's banning a prominent, innocent Jewish man from entering Australia. It seems to me, and to so many Australian Jews that I know, that this Albanese government is presiding over a terrifying period of racism and anti-Semitism. This visa decision, which is as frightening as it is baffling, does nothing to help the impression that the government is no friend of Israel and no friend of Jews. And at least now, the whole world knows exactly what we're dealing with.